If you've seen any of my shows in the past, you know that sometimes I'll use props or maybe even costumes when I do my reviews. And with this being a comic book property, it's the perfect excuse to roll some of that out. But I figured this is more of a serious film, so I'd do more of a straightforward, serious review for you. You know what I'm saying? Sounds good? Yeah, I kind of skipped those shenanigans this time. Don't look at me like that. Alright, what the hell? Holy agents of chaos, Batman! Get my shark repellent! We've got to stop this diabolical fiend. What? I had to. I have the costume. Just roll the credits. Welcome to the latest episode of The Cellar Door. And like we already established, we're doing a review of The Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Now this is an origin story about a character named Arthur Fleck. He lives in Gotham City with his mother. He works as a clown for hire, and he has a mental condition which causes him to uncontrollably laugh at inopportune times. Now I remember when I first heard this movie was being made. And the first thing that jumped out at me is that it was being directed by Todd Phillips. Now you might think to yourself, how do I know that name, Todd Phillips? Who's Todd Phillips? Where do I know him from?
Hello. Yeah? I'm here for the gangbang.
That's how you know Todd Phillips. He's here for the gangbang. He directed Old School, obviously. All three of the Hangover movies. He directed Road Trip and Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. So it was a little tough to picture him making the jump from comedies like those, good comedies, to this, darker material. So I went into it expecting it to be a comic book movie with some humor laced into it, but maybe just a little bit of a darker version of the Joker than we've gotten before. And God, was I wrong. It's not that at all. Now, I don't even think I classify this as a comic book movie. I mean, sure, the source material is a DC property. I mean, it takes place in Gotham City. The Wayne family and Alfred the Butler are characters that actually end up playing a pretty significant role in the story development. But that's it. That's where it ends. This character, this Joker, has no place in the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe. And I'll expand a little more on that later. But this is not a superhero versus a villain movie. This is watching a guy through amazing character development start out as a character that you may or may not be sympathetic to, and just watching him sink further and further into madness. And you actually feel sympathy for this guy who later on is just going to become a psycho. And that just shows the great range of Joaquin Phoenix and why he was the perfect choice to play this role. Maybe even too perfect. And what I mean by that is this character, this version of the Joker is so well acted, so well written, so well developed, that I feel like you should never see the Joker again in another DC movie. You can't. You can't go from this version and give me that god-awful Jared Leto version from Suicide Squad ever again. You just can't do it. And truly, it's not even fair to make a comparison between the Joaquin Phoenix Joker versus the Jared Leto one, or even any of the others. The Jack Nicholson from the '89 Tim Burton Batman. Yeah, he was good. And yes, he did exactly what that movie called for him to do and for that character to be. He was a snarky, kind of funny ex-gangster. But even though he was funny, he was able to show you his violent side.
Bob? Gun.
And Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight, he was just the typical agent of chaos straight out of the comic books of how the Joker used to be back in the DC Comics.
And here we go.
This just feels real. This character feels real. More so than any character I've seen in any comic book movie so far. That includes DC or Marvel. So then the question obviously pops up, well, hey, why not use Joaquin Phoenix and this version of the Joker in the future Batman movies? The Matt Reeves, the Batman, which they're starting to film now. I can't see it. You've got, in that version, you've got Robert Pattinson from Twilight is playing Batman. Zoe Kravitz is playing Catwoman. And Jeffrey Wright is playing Commissioner Gordon. And they just announced Paul Dano as the Riddler. Now they have Jonah Hill cast, but they're not sure who he's going to play, the Penguin or maybe a different villain. No way does Joaquin Phoenix fit in with those actors or those characters. No offense to them, they're good on their own, but this is just a performance that's head and shoulders above anything they're going to do. It would be like making a Pixar movie and having Martin Scorsese direct it. Now, I bring up Scorsese on purpose because there's a lot in this movie that seems to be an homage to Scorsese. Just the sets alone, the 70s Gotham, the best version of Gotham City I've seen in any TV show or movie made so far. The sets and the time period took place in the 70s really reminds you of Mean Streets. And the main character, Arthur Fleck, where he starts out as a sympathetic guy and you can see his slow descent into madness and even his awkward relationship with the female lead, in this case it was Zazie Beetz, reminds me of Taxi Driver, the Robert De Niro character from Taxi Driver. And of course, Robert De Niro is in this movie as a talk show host, which to me seemed to be a callback to The King of Comedy and the Jerry Lewis character who played a similar talk show host who was kidnapped by Robert De Niro. And of course, the scene where the Joker fights the Dalai Lama could be a callback to the Scorsese film Kundun.
Marty! Kundun! I liked it!
Okay, one of those scenarios is false. The two rules of my show is I don't curse and I don't use spoilers. So I wanted to throw in a false one in there just to kind of throw you off. So I won't tell you which of those references is not true. Now, my one piece of advice to DC would be stay the course. Look at what you have here. Look at what you've created. And look at what you have on the horizon. Because, let's face it, all due respect to The Dark Knight, DC movies suck. I mean, Suicide Squad and Justice League are terrible. Wonder Woman was okay. I think it's pretty overrated because I think it has a terrible third act due to an awful villain, which is probably the biggest complaint you could have about any comic book movie. And I thought Aquaman was near unwatchable. Terrible. But maybe if DC goes dark, goes serious, goes R-rated, they could create something that's their own. You're never going to top Marvel with the family-friendly superhero movies. You just can't do it. You don't have the filmmakers, you don't have the actors that Marvel has. You're not going to top them. They've cornered the market on that family-friendly Disney superhero stuff. You need to distance yourself, so you go dark. You can do an R-rated superhero movie. Look at Deadpool and Logan. Those were Marvel movies, but they were R-rated. They were very well received. But you know DC's not going to do it. And truly, the one thing DC has going for them right now is Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She was in the Suicide Squad movie. There's going to be another Suicide Squad movie, and they're featuring her in the Birds of Prey movie. And in no way does this Joker belong in the same movie or universe with that Harley Quinn. Because what they've done here is pretty ingenious. They've taken a good story, a great actor, and a good character development, and they kind of just painted over it as a DC movie. This isn't, honestly, the Joker. This is a sympathetic guy turning into a psychopath who just happens to become the Joker. Now, I realize this has been less of a review and more of a kind of discussion of me going off on the rails, which you get a lot on this show. Okay. So switching back more to the review part of it, I think this is a terrific movie. It gets a little preachy, I'll say that. it seems to be almost an indictment of the rich, of social services, government, even the treatment of mental illness. I mean, there's a great quote, two great quotes actually, I think, from that sum that up. Arthur is sitting with his social worker, and he just finds out that the funding's been cut for that program, and he's no longer going to be able to see the social worker. And he says to her, "What am I going to do now? Where am I going to get my medication?" And she just kind of throws up her hands and she says, "They don't care about you, Arthur. Probably not much more than they care about me." And that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the movie on how it's society that created this villain, that shaped this character into the Joker, into the psychopath that he becomes. And the other great quote that I really liked is he actually scribbles it in his journal, and he says, "The worst part about having a mental illness is that people expect you to behave like you don't," which I thought was pretty deep and a good quote. But like I said, this is a terrific movie. I think Joaquin Phoenix is a lock to be nominated for Best Actor Oscar. And I would really like to see this in the mix for Best Picture. It's got to be the best movie I've seen so far this year. So I expect it to at least be nominated. Now, we all know that when it comes to the Oscars, the movie that wins Best Picture is almost never the best movie of that year. Never. So I'm going to score The Joker an 8.5 out of 10, and I'm definitely going to recommend that you go see it. As long as you keep in mind, it's not a comic book movie. It's not a kid's movie. It's a rated R movie. I hate to tell people what they should and should not see or take their kids to see. I'll tell you, the violence in the movie has been a little overblown in the media, I think. If your kids are used to rated R movies, you're probably okay with this. The character's a little darker, but it's nothing worse than you'd see in any other rated R movie. So of course, that choice is yours. But I want to thank you for watching this show. I want you to like, comment, subscribe, hit all those YouTube G-spots for me. And thanks for watching. And hey, don't miss the previews.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.